Hello everybody, welcome to another digital art lesson. This week I thought I'd start things off a little bit different because we're going to talk about how jazz influenced artist Jean-Michel Basquiat, and he used it as one of his inspirations to create his amazing paintings. Let's talk about what we're going to need for today's lesson. Okay, so in a minute here we're going to talk about how Jean-Michel Basquiat drew on and painted on just about anything he could find. So I thought it'd be fun today to draw on some of those things that we might have lying around. Now, if you have a brown paper bag lying around, you can go ahead and cut whatever shape you'd like out of that brown paper bag as your medium to draw on today. You could also do it on a piece of cardboard. Now, I had a piece of cardboard lying around, and I chose to do my example on the other side of this, which we'll look at in a minute. Now, if you have oil pastels lying around, that would be a great thing to use because even the white and the yellow are going to show up very, very bright and vibrant if we use something like a brown paper bag or cardboard. If not, you could use whatever you'd like today. You could use paper, you could use crayons or colored pencils, whatever you have that you would like to use for your project today. Okay, so before we get started talking about artist Jean-Michel Basquiat, I did want to add that there is a link below, and if you want to check out that link, it is a children's book written by Javaka Steptoe, and you want a Caldecott honor for this book about artist Basquiat. Now, if you want to check that out, it's a great read, and it gives you a good background of Basquiat's life. Now, Basquiat was born in 1960 in Brooklyn, New York City, and he lived at home with his mom and his dad and his two younger sisters. Now, his parents always encouraged him to be an artist. His mother would often lie on the floor with him, and they would draw for hours at a time. And his dad would put on those jazz records, right? And just hearing the music and the energy of that music really inspired Jean-Michel to create. And you could see that inspiration in some of his later artwork. Here is a couple paintings that he did, and these are all of jazz artists who he considered heroes. Here's one of a saxophone player. Here's another one. I love this one, all these bright colors. So Jean-Michel loved going to the art museum ever since he was young. With his mother would take him there, and they would look at these big, famous pieces of artwork. And they'd also look at all these old African artifacts and things that were in the museums as well. And here's one that he did of old African masks that he just loved looking at as a kid. And this is his version of a painting of that mask. Now, his work is often considered messy. Some people would say it was messy or sloppy, but beautiful, right? That's what the author talks about in that book, is that even though he didn't stay in the lines, his artwork was still beautiful. Here's another one, very colorful. He did lots of words, wrote lots of words around, underneath, on the side of his artwork, and a lot of his paintings, he has lots of words. Now here's a very famous one that he did. You all maybe have seen this one before, and he put a crown right on top. Now that crown you'll see in a lot of Basquiat's artwork. And that crown is supposed to represent someone who he considered very powerful, almost a hero to him. So he put crowns on people who he considered his heroes. Here's one of a trumpet player. Remember, he loved that jazz music. So here he put a crown on top of someone playing the trumpet. And he also wrote those words that we were talking about. Those are just letters, aren't they? So he loved the movement of New York City and of that jazz music. And he also incorporated a lot of those people who he considered inspirational, right? People like Jackie Robinson and those jazz musicians like Dizzy Gillespie or Charlie Parker, right? And look, he even made it to the poster himself. Here he is, Jean-Michel Basquiat. There he is. So here is a great poster that shows Jean-Michel and all of those people that inspired him to make the beautiful art that he created. Now let's take a look at just a couple more of those that were directly related to jazz music. We just talked about Dizzy Gillespie. He wrote that right up here on this piece of artwork. So he loved to incorporate those musicians, again, that we talked about who inspired him. And what I chose to do today is to take a piece of cardboard. Now remember, we said we can work on whatever you have lying around. You could do a brown paper bag, you could do cardboard, or you could do paper if you'd like to as well. Now, I wanted to do mine on jazz musician Miles Davis. And I did it in the style of Basquiat. I tried to make it look very childlike, right? I drew things the way that I wanted to draw them, maybe not the way that they look in real life, but I wanted to express how I was feeling at that moment when I was drawing as well. So I did lots of bright colors. I crossed things out. Now Basquiat did this in a lot of his artwork. And sometimes he'd do it because he didn't like the way something looked, so he would cross it out and write it again. And another reason he did it was to bring attention to something. Now, if you cross something out and write the same word again, it's going to make the person looking at your artwork wonder why it is you're crossing it out. And that's exactly why he did it, was to bring attention to certain parts of his paintings. So he also did things like symbols. There's a copyright symbol. There's lots of different symbols or words or letters that you can put on your artwork to make it look like a Basquiat-inspired piece of art. So I can't wait to see what you all come up with today. Take all of those things that inspire you. I've had students do people like Kobe Bryant, and they put a crown over top of Kobe Bryant holding a basketball, okay? Take whoever it is that inspires you. Jean-Michel Basquiat was inspired by all of those surrounding people in New York City, like Keith Haring, which is why I'm wearing this sweatshirt, who we talked about before. Keith Haring was another graffiti artist in New York City at that time, and Keith Haring and Basquiat were really good friends. Also, Basquiat and Andy Warhol were really good friends. And we talked about Andy Warhol a little bit last year. He is the famous person who painted the Campbell's soup can. Now, Andy Warhol and Keith Haring and Jean-Michel Basquiat and lots of other people in New York City at that time were doing some very fun and creative things. And they were all friends, inspiring each other to make amazing pieces of art. Now, I can't wait to see what some of you all come up with from today's Basquiat lesson, and I hope you all had fun. See you next week.